So I wrote several books, but my book published by Amplo was about the role of pictures and the veneration of icons in the so-called Oriental Orthodox churches. It was published in different language, but in Greek by Amplo in 2019. And so why to write such a book? Because since the 1980s, I'm very interested by the specific bilateral theological dialogue between the so-called Eastern Orthodox churches and Oriental Orthodox churches. So the Oriental Orthodox churches are the Coptic Church in Egypt, the Ethiopian Church, the Syrian Orthodox Church, and the Armenian Church. And this is the title which was given to them at the beginning of the official dialogue, that is Oriental Orthodox. And so this dialogue began officially. There was an unofficial dialogue since 1964, but the official dialogue began in 1985 in Chambézy in Geneva, which is where I have my parish. And so at that time it was Metropolitan Damaskinos who was responsible for the dialogue and representing all the Eastern Orthodox churches. And there was a Coptic bishop called Bishoy, who was representing the Oriental Orthodox churches. So in each session or each meeting, they were discussing, of course, of the Christology, which was the main argumentation, but they also had texts about what they call recommendations. And they were speaking about practical dialogue. And this became my main interest in life and how I began to write books and articles about the bilateral dialogue between the Eastern Orthodox and Oriental Orthodox churches. No, and this is what the theologians who were representing all their patriarchates and their churches on both sides, Eastern Orthodox and Oriental Orthodox, they said in one document in 1990 that there is no difference about the practice and veneration of icons in the two families of churches. And this is why in this book I read many texts and chose some specific texts showing that in the four Oriental Orthodox churches, Coptic, Ethiopian, Syrian Orthodox and Armenian, they do have pictures, icons, mural paintings from the beginning of the church history until today, that they venerate the icons. Plus, also I published in the book the prayers to bless these pictures and icons. And of course, if you have a prayer, it means, for blessing the icons, it means that you have icons and pictures. And these prayers are found in the book of the bishops, together with the prayers for the consecration of altar and other consecrations, which are prayers made by the bishop, you see. And the conclusion of my book was, in relationship with the dialogue, that, of course, they have icons and representations of Christ as a human. He's represented as a man. And of course, this shows that if they represent Christ as a man, they are not monophysite, because in monophysism, the humanity of Christ is swallowed by the divinity. And so this is one more way to show that these churches are not monophysite. Well, at least it shows that, yes, they believe that Jesus Christ, representing Christ as a man, they believe that he is not only fully God, but that he is fully man, you know. And there is another field in which I think it's very interesting to study the faith of the Oriental Orthodox. It is to read their prayers. not only the anaphoras of their liturgies, but also any prayer that they have in their different traditions. And there you can find many times that they speak of Christ being fully God, fully man, and without separation and without mixture, because this was the problem, you know. And so everybody should be convinced, you know, by just reading these liturgical texts about the Christology of the Oriental Orthodox churches. No, and this is another interesting point, that they never had any iconoclasm in the tradition of the Oriental Orthodox. And this is why I wanted to take these examples, you know, about veneration of icons and the presence of pictures, icons in these four traditions from the beginning of the history of church until nowadays. And we see that there was no iconoclasm. Yes, well, I have written several books for the sake of the dialogue, always. So at the beginning, I wrote a book about with the text of the theological dialogue, the official dialogue, and then these texts were put all together with articles in a book published by the Volos Academy here in Greece, and that was in 2016. And we had the best theologians on both sides. On the Orthodox, Eastern Orthodox side, we have articles by Father Andrew Louth, Father John Baer, Professor Marcellos, Professor Fidas, etc. I'm not going Norman Russell. And in fact, they explain in details many things which were not discussed in details in the text of the official dialogue. So it was important, I mean, to go deeper into many questions about the anathema, about ecclesiology, about also Christology, about Severus of Antioch and Dioscoros of Alexandria. So they answer so many questions which were asked by some Eastern Orthodox, you know, during and after these meetings of the official dialogue. So the book is very informative, I would say. And now I have this project of gathering articles, and it will be published again by Volos Academy, about the positive relationship which existed along the centuries after the Schism of Chalcedon in 451. And I think it's time to speak of the positive relationship which existed between the two families of churches. And recently I have also published a book about the traditional education in the Ethiopian Orthodox Church, which is with commentaries of the Gospel, of patristic books and other books of the Ethiopian tradition. And this teaching is oral until today, which is unique in Christianity. And I also wrote a book about the ancient church, Assyrian Church of the East, so-called Nestorian, but Sebastian Brock of Oxford, who wrote the preface of my book, explains that once again there was a misunderstanding in the terminology. So the dialogue has been very fruitful at the time of Metropolitan Damaskinos, because we had, you know, so many meetings between the beginning of the dialogue 1985 until 1993. Unfortunately, Metropolitan Damaskinos had a stroke, and the dialogue was somehow stopped. And I don't see much progress, you know, in the last years. And also it was also due to the problems in the Middle East, with the war in Syria, with different problems in Lebanon and also in Egypt. And by the way, I have one book about persecution and discrimination of the Copts since the 1970s until the fall of Mubarak. And for the present time, of course, the dialogue, I don't know how the responsible people will do something. I hope they will do their best, but it's true that we have these problems between the patriarchates of Moscow and Constantinople. Now with the political problem of the war in Ukraine, people, you know, are taking sides, and I think it will not be easy to gather all the Eastern Orthodox and Oriental Orthodox to continue the dialogue. So what I propose at my very humble level is that we should work for this dialogue at the pastoral level, and at the local level, like, you know, in Western Europe or North America, where we have many of these communities of all the Oriental Orthodox and Eastern Orthodox, and I think that the bishops and priests and people, it's time that they meet, they speak together, they see what they can do together, you know, like when you have only one Syrian Orthodox family in a place where there is no Syrian Orthodox priest. I just take an example. Let's say in America, which in the States or Canada, the countries are huge. So of course we should find pastoral agreements and see what can we do to help people in hospital or maybe in jail or from social work, you know. So I think it's great time also to be practical and to see what we can do together.